Lesson 3.11 is all about MLA in-text citations in preparation for writing your research proposal and giving credit to the sources that you use in that research proposal. So, our content objective is I can follow MLA guidelines to include adequate citations in my research report or proposal. The language objective is I can use MLA guidelines to properly format in-text citations in my research report or proposal. As a reminder from lesson 3.7, MLA stands for the Modern Language Association, and it is a style of documenting sources that can be applied to many different types of writing in a consistent way. So, if I'm looking at your annotated bibliography, you're using the same format as every other student. So, I can go and find the source information that you have included in your annotated bibliography and in your research report. Let's talk about the difference between your annotated bibliography and citations. So, your annotated bibliography looks something like this with your MLA formatted citations, like this. Your annotated bibliography is your list of sources that you are using in your research report. And the citation information is where you are giving credit in your writing using the information from a source and then giving credit to the source where that information comes from. And it's going to look something like this. So, our example here is that one of the 5 floating plastic debris zones in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch measures 620,000 square miles. And then my in-text citation is Bieberdorf and Hogan. So, the information in this sentence is not my own information. Like, I don't know this just on my own. I had to go find this. And the place where I found it is in this source that was written by Bieberdorf and Hogan. So this right here specifically is my citation information, that part in parentheses. And how I know which information to use, I am going to pull that from my annotated bibliography. And we are going to talk in a few slides in the future about how to create those in-text citations and what that needs to look like. Okay, so let's talk about what in-text citations are. So in-text citations means exactly what it says. So citations that are in the text that you have written. Sometimes they are called parenthetical citations because they are in parentheses. This punctuation mark here is called parentheses. You're providing relevant source information in the parentheses when you use information from that source. So, whether you are using a direct quote, taking it directly from the source, if you're summarizing and putting it in your own words, or you're paraphrasing and putting it in your own words, if it is not your original idea, then you need to give credit to where you got that information from. And how we are going to do that is one way we're going to do it is to put the information in parentheses at the end of the sentence just before the period. So if we are citing in text like this, then we will use parenthetical citation like this at the end of the sentence just before the period. And this is a part that trips up some students. You're including the parenthetical citation information as if it were part of the sentence. So that's why the period goes on the outside. Okay, now let's talk about how to know what information to include in the parenthetical citation. So, the way you're going to figure that out is go take a look at your annotated bibliography. And the first part of your annotated bibliography on each source is what you're going to include in the in-text citation. So, whatever appears first is that corresponds with that citation is what you're going to put in the parentheses. So if you have one author like this, Corey Pelk is one author, I'm just going to include the last name. If there are 2 authors, on the annotated bibliography, we have the first author, last name, comma, first name, and then first name, last name of the second author. You will just include the last names in the parenthetical citation. If no author is given, you will use whatever information comes first in the annotated bibliography entry. So this one is the title of a web page. It could be the title of an article. It could be the title of a whole website. If you're looking at print sources, it could be a book title or a magazine article. It's whatever comes first if there's not an author's name given. You're going to use that in parentheses. Now, if there is a title that's really long, like some web articles are like 20 words long, you can just shorten it and use just the first couple of words in that title in parentheses. Okay, putting all of this together, when we are embedding evidence and citing, we need to have these three things. So the first thing is a signal phrase, which we have been using all year long, and I know you have used before this year. So this is where you are telling your reader, I'm about to give some information that is not my own. So when we use sentence starters like in the text it says, or the author writes, those are signal phrases. Okay. Hit and run quoting is when students take a quote and just drop it in as its own sentence without giving any kind of signal as to where that information is coming from. And we don't want any hit and run quoting where you just drop it and go. Then you need the quotation, paraphrase, or summary itself. And then you want to give credit to the source. So we've talked about parenthetical citation. We're going to talk about one other way to do this as well. So we've already mentioned using signal phrases that introduce the source information. Get myself out of the way here. And we can do this a couple different ways. So according to Bieberdorf and Hogan, and then use the quotation. According to the authors, then the quotation, and then the parenthetical citation. Notice that I'm getting the parenthetical information from my annotated bibliography entry, what comes first. Now, the difference between these two is if you include the author's names in the signal phrase, like I did in the first example, then you do not need to have a parenthetical citation, right? We don't need to say, according to Bieberdorf and Hogan, the information, and then put the parenthetical citation again. You only need to mention the names once in the sentence. Now, if I say according to the authors and I don't tell you who the authors are, then I do need to include that information in parentheses. You can also use source information and embed it naturally within a sentence. So it could read something like, one of the 5 floating plastic debris zones in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch measures 620,000 square miles. So this right here might look like it's all my original idea because I don't use a signal phrase that says the author says or these authors' names say. But in order to give credit to the source information, I'm going to include that parenthetical citation at the end of the sentence. And the information from the source would be this right here. 5 floating plastic debris zones in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch measure 620 square miles. So I've taken the information directly from the article and I have put it into my own words and paraphrased it and put it into this sentence here.